meeting. So this is a regular meeting of the Board of Finance. Today is Tuesday, April 19th. It is 5:00 p.m. Participating in the meeting in person, I have Board of Finance member Lorraine Pesky, Board of Finance member Jim Wright. Participating via Zoom, I have Lance Boynton and Christopher Bayes. Before we begin the meeting, could we please stand and pledge the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Try to make this one short and sweet because starting next week, the Board of Finance, City Council, Board of Safety, Board of Education start hitting it pretty heavy and steady on budget reviews. So item 1 on the agenda is to open the meeting to the public. I see no member of the public present, so I'm going to just go ahead and skip over that. Is there anybody on the call that not that they can participate, but this is it. Okay. Then we'll move into item 2. I'll take a motion to accept the meeting minutes of March 15th, 2022.
So moved.
Mr. Wright and Mr. Boynton, questions or comments on the motion or the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 3. I will entertain a motion to authorize. Sorry. I'll authorize the expense of $8,240 in contingency funds for in-person training for city personnel and the permitting software from Central Square. This was previously approved by the City Council on April 4th, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Pesky and seconded by Mr. Wright. Questions on this? And again, it's coming out of the contingency line item.
What's the balance of contingency, Mayor?
Yes, I think there were a couple of expenses that came out. Yes. I don't have that number.
As long as we're well performing, I think that's the scope of my question.
Mayor, do you know if this is an annual training or biannual? Does this encompass everybody that needs the training?
So this is going to be in person, 3 8-hour days here at City Hall with the departments that will be utilizing the permitting software. So it's the building department, fire department, land use office, engineering. The reason we need to do this is this software, the permitting software, is actually being constructed for us. It's designed. And when we first entered into the contract to do this, everything was being done remotely. And for the last 9 months, there has been remote training, but you're designing it, building it as you train. And there are too many gaps to make this go live. So this is an opportunity to bring them out here, have them sit with every department head and support staff that will be using the program and make sure that they fully understand and are using it properly.
Lance, I attended that meeting, that city council meeting, and those kinds of questions, the council went through very carefully through it, trying to understand why it hadn't been included. And there was training included, but it wasn't in person, and it's a very complicated system. My question at the end of the meeting was, is it that complicated for the public? And apparently it isn't. It's really simple for the public to put in their requests for permits, but that the degree of of specificity that each of the departments has because it is created for us. That was what prompted the need for the training in person.
So this is basically kind of a one-time, it's not going to be an annual training. It's a new software rollout. So it's an in-person training, are they going to provide, kind of like a takeaway training document? Or is that already done?
Yes, there will be, not only will there be the takeaway, but because this has been constructed specifically with how Torrington issues permits, follows up on permits, moves those permits into an assessor's office so that they can be built onto a assessor's card. There will also be a training manual, a written transcript of what each department does. So Rista Malanka is still taking the lead on this. I have to give her credit. She's, a one-woman office doing a whole lot of everything else. And the fact that she didn't toss her hands in the air and say this is too complicated is somewhat of a miracle. But yeah, we do expect that this will be fine. With these intense in-person hours, there's always an option to bring them back out if we need to, but we don't expect to need additional training after this.
And I agree. There's definitely a difference about being in the room. Believe me, I'm not in the room right now, and there's a difference, but so I completely understand the need for being able to touch it and feel it and talk to somebody present.
Thank you for saying that. That's probably 90% of the issue as well. When you're doing these one-offs online with people, even those departments that interact with each other on this, on one end of the permitting to the other, the building department to the assessor's office. It's that piece was also missing. So, all right, if there are any other questions, and to Mr. Bayes, I did pull up the budget performance reports were sent out. And according to the budget performance report, there have been no expenses against this contingency.
Yeah, I don't recall there being any, so.
So this, the balance in that account right now is 150,000. And with this expense, we're still 140,000 with roughly 2 months left to the year.
It's a good place to be. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, last call for questions on this one. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4. I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Robin, you're the only department head in the room.
I'm gonna have Heather send out the audit tomorrow, so you can review. As you know, heavy into the budget. We are looking at forecasts for year end. We have 2 people that started in our department. We filled the AP position and Tina's position for deputy comptroller. Michelle for AP started last Monday and started this Monday. So we are working on training them and getting them up to speed.
Thank you. Any questions for Robin?
Can you just paraphrase what she said? It didn't come
I know
through.
she's so far from the microphone. I should have asked. Sorry about that. So just quickly, in our financial office, we had 2 vacancies. Both vacancies have been filled after some months of, hobbling along. So the AP position was filled last Monday. She started working, and our deputy comptroller position was filled yesterday or started working. So we're pretty excited. I think these are really 2 good hires in an office that has been working on institutional knowledge for the last 27 years. So under the circumstances, I gotta say, I think Robin is doing a pretty remarkable job. Audit, budget, and keeping the current operating budget on task. Yeah. So this year, we did not get hard copies of the audit for everybody. If you want a hard copy, I'm happy to have a copy made for you and we can provide that. Hard copy.
It's
Okay with the
online. It'll be-
electronic?
It's gonna be sent online, correct?
It's gonna, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
send an electronic version and
Yeah.
then
I can take that.
the audit is also posted to the website. So if anybody else is looking for a hard copy, I'll have Maureen warm up the copier. Good, sure, actually,
Save it, Trey.
you, okay. All right, then, item 5, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by the mayor and members.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Boynton, seconded by Mr. Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
We are open for comments to the screen. Mr. Boynton, anything this evening?
The, a couple years ago, I know we modified the blight officer position. Is there just any kind of an update on how that's going? Have there been, I don't know even how to phrase it, but just kind of any updates on that? I know that was an issue that we talked about quite a bit a couple of years ago. So,
Yes. Yeah. So we established a blight enforcement officer position as a part-time position. She is now 2 years into the job, 2.5 years into the job. We have cited slightly over 130 property owners for blight. Roughly 120 of those have been brought into compliance. We have been successful in pursuing through blight enforcement foreclosure actions on 2 properties. One property was a very blighted piece of property on Newfield Spring Road that we went through straight through the court to a strict foreclosure, took title to the property, and it was so badly maintained that it was best just to demo the house, flatten, the property, and the city now owns a building lot on Newfield Spring Road that is contiguous to other property the city already owns. The second piece of property is 126 High Street. The property was acquired by the city in October. We put the property on the market. It is redeemable. We had hoped that there would be a purchaser that could go in, repair, and perhaps flip it or live in it. We did this through a bid process. There was a successful bidder, and now our Corporation Counsel office is working with that purchaser to transfer title. Our blight enforcement fund now has a little over $100,000 in it. That $100,000 is the result of fines for non-compliant property owners, the foreclosures, and other enforcement actions that need to be taken. The one property that I think has created the most angst from the blight enforcement perspective is property on Red Oak Hill. It is owned by a property owner who has been notoriously delinquent in property maintenance. And through the courts, we reached the court's determination to do the foreclosure by sale. The sale was supposed to occur in October of 2021. There were something like 40 bidders on this piece of property. Red Oak Hill is a rather desirable neighborhood. And the successful bidder was the property owner. So we did not remove that property from the ownership of the property owner, but he did pay all the blight fines. So and it's still blighted. So now we're back at it again, going after him for blight. So the system isn't perfect, it is flawed, but we're persistent. So
Excuse me, the property owner rebought the property?
he did. He redeemed the property by being the
He
top
had-
bidder.
He had the funds to rebuy the property?
Yes, he did. The fines, legal fees, court costs were slightly over $90,000. And he was the top bidder with over $130,000, I think his bid was. The successful bid was 130. And yes, he did have the funds to do that.
And so the city got $130,000.
We got 90, we got what we were owed. And then the rest of the money is through the court system returned as, the surplus would be returned to any property owner.
Excellent.
Yes. So unfortunately, we're still working on that one. But I count, when I say there's over $110,000 in that blight fund right now, those are net expenses of court costs. We are also charging to that fund the court costs for the Yankee Peddler Inn, which is another property that is blighted. We're pursuing litigation on that property through the abandoned blighted properties legislation. So all of those court costs and legal fees are being charged to that blight fund. So success in anybody's book is compliance, a piece of property that is no longer blighted. We don't want to own anybody's property. That's never the goal. The blight committee meets twice a month. And we begin every meeting with saying exactly that. What's the mission? The mission is compliance, and then we go down the list of those chronic properties that just can't get to compliance. We have 3 more properties that are in litigation, moving towards foreclosure, but not there yet.
No, I think it's a testament to all the hard work to actually, first of all, get a program in place, and the fact that it's funding. And we keep talking about, from a finance standpoint, increasing the grand list. Well, it's easier to increase the grand list when we have a policy and some teeth behind it on blight, because nobody wants to build next to a blighted property. So I think this all goes hand in hand with some of the recovery actions that through your administration we've started to build over the last several years. So thank you for the recap. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And our blight enforcement officer is really quite amazing. I think she's about 26 years old, and she's on her game. She knows who to pull in if she's going to a property and thinks she needs some police enforcement. She's on the phone or texting the police officer that's been assigned to the blight committee. So a great committee and a really good enforcement officer. You will see in the budget proposal that our plan is to make that a full-time position, because what we have learned in the last year is that part-time is not enough. There are a lot of properties out there. And some of those properties require more hands-on. It's an elderly couple, that don't know how to fix their property. Their family are too far removed to be aware of the conditions they're living in. So that's a piece of her job that we didn't anticipate, but we know is the right thing to do. So in your budget proposals, you will see that we are moving to make that full-time. Given where we are with the budget, that might be something that we do at the half-year mark, just so that we can ease that into a budget, over a 2-year period of time. So To you, Mr. Vegas, anything this evening?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Ms. Pesky?
During the budget subcommittee discussion, the good healthcare experience has come up. So that's good for us.
Yes.
However, are the people enrolled continuing to go for their screenings and healthcare exams? Because every time you read about what's going to happen or is happening right now, that our people are showing up with stage 4 cancers instead of stage 1 because they haven't in the last almost 3 years now been going to the doctor regularly. So that made me concerned. I think, I mean, obviously it's wonderful that it's the healthcare experience is good. And what that meant was that the fee that we were going to have to pay was going to go down. So always a really good, especially when you read in the paper that a lot of other communities, cities and towns, that their health insurance is going up, like 8%, 3, 4, 8% in some places.
No, I know. The, I agree with you. Always the concern is, are the employees and their family members doing those wellness visits and those pre-screenings? And so I just made a note to myself that we haven't been having our health fairs for obvious reasons. Those health fairs are here in the auditorium with all healthcare providers and resources. And we always give the employees an hour off in their day so they can get here, so that they are paying attention to that. So I'll work with our HR department and see if we can get another health fair out so that we're reminding our insured employees and their family members that this is extremely important.
Well, and I mean, as self-funded, you see, can you get a report on whether people are doing that?
We do. We have a very comprehensive review with Cigna annually, and Joe Spurgeon from Lindbergh and Ripple that goes through and tells us exactly, who's accessing those regular wellness visits. Who's, I mean, it's really so much detail that it's really hard not to develop some strategies that become more proactive. What are those tier 1 drugs that maybe they could be using a generic where somebody may have a chronic condition that may be ignoring regular checkups with their physician, a gentle reminder, as a diabetic or somebody with asthma, that these kinds of visits are critical. So those are strategies that good takeaways that we get when we review those.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wright.
No, nothing that used to save your voice.
Thank you. All right. So as Lorraine Pesky was just saying, Budget Subcommittee has pretty much wrapped up the review of the large departments that are usually the driving departments for budget increases, and made a recommendation. I'm working with the department heads to bring forward some suggestions for budget cuts that'll be more in line with what their recommendation is, so that we can pass that on to the council and ultimately on to the budget subcommittee. So you will be seeing level 2 budget reports in the next 2 weeks. Council meets again 2 weeks from yesterday. So I'll share those with you before they go to the council. And we're working right now on all of those revenue streams. On the state, what we're paying very close attention to on the revenue side is whether or not there will be that mill rate cap for the motor vehicles. What does that cap look like? If it's capped at 29, will the state be making us whole for the sum between 29 and 46.17? Or will they make us whole between 29 and 45?
Excuse me, does that look like something you're gonna give a number before June or
Before,
July or August or something?
absolutely, yes. So legislative session ends May 7th. I sincerely hope they don't go into an extended session. But even if they did, if the extension is for a week, we're going to finish much earlier this year than we did last year. So I'm looking at that budget calendar, and I think we're still staying true to the proposal on that calendar. And the only other thing is, as I'm listening to Mr. Boynton talk about the grand list, as you know, grand list growth this year was a little over 3%, but 25% of that was our motor vehicle. So our early reported numbers from the governor's budget showed that the amount the state would be sending to the city under the MRSA motor vehicle reimbursement was 4.5 million. But that was based on last year's grand list numbers. So I'm hoping that revenue number is actually higher, which if it's 25% higher means it's a big difference for us on budget adoption. You have the Board of Education budgets before you. It is both their capital budget is a separate document. When you're reviewing this and you're looking at the percentage increase, just keep in mind those two capital, technology and facility capital, are on top of what their $4.4 million request is. So a lot of work for us to do in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, if there is no other question for me, there being no further business before the board, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Boynton. Second by Ms. Pesky. All in favor? Any opposed? We're all good. Thank you all. I'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night, all.